BBC reporting that Donald Trump has now paused some of the Canadian and Mexican tariffs that he imposed a couple of days ago until next month. He's making it up as he goes along, isn't he, Simon?
He is making it up as he goes along, certainly as far as tariffs are concerned, and the moves that he's made over the last couple of hours here, Ian, has done nothing to soothe the markets. The Dow Jones Industrial Average right now is down another 466 points. That's another 1% in the index's value. We've seen similar falls on the Nasdaq and the S&P. And so if this move by Donald Trump, with a partial climb down announced yesterday and now a fuller climb down announced today, was designed to stop the rout on Wall Street, it does not currently appear to have worked. There's about another 45 minutes left in the trading day in New York, so we'll keep an eye and see if that situation turns itself around. But there are growing concerns about the president's insistence that the United States not only can weather a trade war with Canada, Mexico and China, but thrive as the result of that trade war. I mean, he keeps being told by Nobel Prize winning economists that he is simply wrong if he thinks that the costs of a trade war are not going to be passed on to consumers here in the United States. And there was demonstrable evidence of it this week, because the minute Canada increased the price of its crude to overcome the 25% tariffs that were being imposed on Tuesday at petrol stations in various parts of the country here, prices per gallon started ticking up 20 cents a gallon, 30 cents a gallon, 40 cents a gallon higher. And so people could immediately see the impact this was having. Even the Fox Business Channel spent a day broadcasting live from a Ford truck dealership in Detroit, close to the the Canadian border. And you could see the prices of pickup trucks going up as the dealership took into account the fact that new stocks were going to be priced at a higher level. So, you know, how long he carries on announcing tariffs and then doing what he's done today, which is sort of kick them into the long grass, we'll come back to it again in a month's time. I think it's weighing on investors, it's weighing on the public, and his argument that, you know, we're simply correcting a situation where other countries have been ripping us off for decades is not currently an argument that I think is entirely resonating with the American public that's worried about rising prices, whether it's the cost of petrol at the pumps or food in the supermarkets or, you know, steel that they may be needing for building and construction projects.
Right, let's go to James in Barnes. James, hi.
Hi. This is more or less what I wanted to ask Simon, is that when you think that this was one of the strands that won him the election, apart from the Haitian immigrants coming across and eating the cats and the dogs, that it was to make America's economy grow, bring down inflation, prices would come down. And any economist would have told him, I mean, it's a bit like the American version of Brexit, that if you try and destroy your biggest market that you trade with, there's only one answer as to what's going to happen. And so my question to Simon is...
just before you go on with that, James, of course, UK exports to the EU are higher now than they were at Brexit.
They may be higher, but the Brexit effect on our economy is being suffered enormously, isn't it, Ian?
Well,
and that's my point.
So you say. Anyway, carry on with your question.
Okay, well, I've never heard of the exports being... I trust you're right, Ian. I haven't checked in the last few weeks whether the exports to France and Germany are higher than they were before we Brexited. And I know you were a Brexiter, so I'm not... I don't have any argument with people that voted for it. But it seems to me that the American population were conned, similar to how Boris Johnson did it, into thinking that we're all going to be better off by voting for this man, when in fact we're now worse off. So my question to Simon is, does he think, bear in mind that Trump has got so much backing from all the billionaires, from Amazon to we go on and on and on, whose market share has dropped enormously, et cetera, that eventually he will actually have to somehow pull back from this and give clarity to the markets, and forget kicking it down, you know, a month down the road. He will have to come out of it completely, because otherwise I don't see where this ends.
Simon?
Yeah, I think that's a really important and trenchant question, James. I think that the difficulty with all of this, as Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, expressed this week, is that Donald Trump is building arguments that are based on sand. He's making policy that is based on disinformation. And he's not only doing it with regard to tariffs, you can also argue that he's doing exactly the same with regard to the crisis in Ukraine, saying things like the Ukrainians started it. I mean, as far as this trade war is concerned, he is absolutely convinced that if you impose these tariffs, the result will be, one, the United States collects millions and millions and millions of dollars in tariffs that it's not currently collecting, that can be then used to help the United States economy. By the way, the mechanism for how the United States is actually going to collect those tariffs is also coming under strain because it doesn't exist in sufficient, it's insufficiently developed and large to collect the kind of tariffs at the borders that suddenly customs are being required to assess. But he believes that you're going to be awash with cash that he can then use to offset some of the negative impacts, which will be inflationary. He denies those negative impacts are going to occur. In his mind, you can amass all of this money through tariffs, use it to balance the budget. He's even suggested that perhaps one day there'll be so much money sloshing around from tariffs and from Elon Musk's war on waste and fraud in public expenditure that it might even be possible to abandon income tax, the federal income tax here, as the key source of government funding. Now, you know, there just aren't very many economists out there that buy any of that. And yet this entire policy has been constructed on that false narrative. And so what I think Justin Trudeau was, you know, really confounded by as he sought to push back against this was, and he quoted the Wall Street Journal, which has said, this is a dumb policy. It's a policy that's not rooted in reality. Now, the markets have provided the corrective over the last 48 hours, but Trump is not ready to fold his tent. He's not throwing his hand in. He's simply saying, I'll come back to it again in a month's time. At the end of the day, it's all going to come down to one very simple question. When I go into a supermarket, am I going to be able to afford a dozen eggs and the other goods, the prices of which are still continuing to rise? And for how long can President Trump point the finger of blame for those price rises on Joe Biden? With every passing day, there's more of a limit on his ability to persuade the public that it was all Joe Biden's fault. Eventually, he's going to own this situation. He just doesn't quite own it yet.